Colombia's Institute for Development and Peace Studies reported the death of four people in a new massacre in the village of Mondomo in the department of Cauca. Argentina recorded its highest ever number of daily coronavirus infections on Tuesday, with new measures to be implemented to curb the spread of the virus. Kenya condemned the United Kingdom's decision to add the East African country to its coronavirus travel red list. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The Colombian Institute for Development and Peace Studies Indepaz reported the death of 4 people in the new massacre in the village of Mondomo, municipality of Santander de Quilichao in the department of Cauca. According to preliminary reports, 5 people were attacked by armed men on Wednesday night in the sector of the Cascabel village in the jurisdiction of Santander de Quilichao. 3 people died at the site, and the 4th lost his life while being transported to a healthcare center. So far, the victims had not been identified. The Regional Indigenous Council of Cauca also denounced that on April the 6th, the indigenous leader and human rights defender Elias Troches was the victim of an attack in Timbío, Cauca. According to Indepaz, this accounts as the 4th massacre registered in the department of Cauca in 2021 and the 36th since Iván Duque took office in 2018. As part of its privatization campaign, the government of Jair Bolsonaro proceeded to auction the concessions of airports, railways, and ports to private companies. During the first day of the handover of the public patrimony, the executive granted the authorization for 30 years of 22 airports for $600 million, an amount much higher than expected. Experts assured that the business and transnational groups that have acquired the public transportation system at a low price will operate 11% of the passenger traffic, equivalent for 24 million people. Social organizations rejected the auction methods during the health crisis, saying that the earnings collection will not go to the health sector, as announced by the Palacio Planalto. This Wednesday, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America held a conference on senior officials on women's affairs and gender equality to discuss the challenges that women face in today's society. The meeting, which was held virtually, was attended by high-level authorities on women's and gender issues from Venezuela, Cuba, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, and also St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The officials evaluated the progress and challenges in the construction of a fairer, more equal and inclusive society, with a particular focus on the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impacts on women. Also discussed the role of women in building alternatives to neoliberal measures in the region.
The attack that we suffered in 2019 in our country, the coup against the constitutional government, against brother Evo Morales, after 37 years of democracy, unleashed not only massacres with assassinations, wounded, detainees, exiles, in addition to the huge number of human rights violations. There was a major setback in the struggle for the patriarchalization, for the decolonization, which resulted in some clear examples that we haven't been able to see, with some images, despite the restrictions and the media blackout that we experienced during the coup and the mediatized government.
And as part of the ALBA conference, Venezuela's Minister for Women and Gender Equality, Carolis Perez, condemned the unilateral coercive measures imposed by the United States and their impact on the access to health services for millions of women and adolescents in Venezuela, Cuba, and other sovereign nations.
Coercive and unilateral measures constitute an act of violence against women and a flagrant act of violation of human rights.
Meanwhile, the Secretary General of the Federation of Cuban Women, Teresa Marelli, noted that ALBA TCP member states have the challenge of seeking alternative projects to build sustainable development that guarantee gender equality.
The governments of ALBA TCP have the challenge of seeking viable alternatives to strengthen unity and solidarity as fundamental principles to preserve peace, without which it is not possible to build development and sustainable projects, where all human beings have the same rights and opportunities without any kind of discrimination.
Peruvian transportation workers are holding a 24-hour strike due to the government's lack of response to their demands and the economic losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Trade union spokesperson David Mujica announced the strike action after failing to reach an agreement with the Urban Transport Authority. He urged the government to prioritize the talks with the sector workers, warning that the protests could be prolonged indefinitely if not. As the strike action began this Wednesday, local media reported that there were large crowds of people waiting for transport services, including health personnel and other essential workers. The strike comes just 4 days before the general elections to be held on Sunday. At least 5 people died on Wednesday night in the U.S. after shooting at a home in York County, South Carolina. According to York County Sheriff's Office, the victims are a doctor, his wife, their 2 underage grandchildren, and also another person who was working at their home. Another person was transported to the hospital with serious gunshot wounds. The local authorities also said to have captured a suspect who may be a close neighbor of the victims, and also assured there is no active threat for the community. On Wednesday, an expert police witness has told it that the accused former officer Derek Chauvin used a technique designed to deliberately inflict pain and subjected George Floyd for an unnecessary extended period. Minneapolis former officer Derek Chauvin is charged with murder and manslaughter for the death of George Floyd on May 25, 2020, in what is considered a trial not only to the ex-officer but also on systemic racism in police officers' practices in the United States.
Have an opinion to a degree of reasonable professional certainty whether the force used, as shown in Exhibit 254, whether that force being applied then for the restraint period, which you've defined as 9 minutes and 29 seconds, would constitute deadly force.
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
That it would.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Argentina recorded its highest ever number of daily coronavirus infections on Tuesday. The Ministry of Health reported more than 20,000 new cases in 24 hours, taking the total number of infections into the country to more than 2.4 million. The province of Buenos Aires recorded half of the confirmed cases, and the metropolitan area of the capital announced a critically high level of hospital bed occupancy. The data was released as the government evaluates different measures to restrict the movement of people in a bid to curb the rising infection rate. Health Minister Carla Bisotti said the measures will be intensive, temporary, and localized. Authorities stated that the primary sources of infections are social gatherings and clandestine parties.
There are high-risk and low-risk activities, and the measures that have the greatest positive impact to contain the pandemic are intensive, transitory, early, and geographically localized measures to reduce the movement of people. We are working today, and in a later meeting with the province and the city of Buenos Aires, we are going to decide on the measures.
An expert from Brazil's leading public health institute has recommended the country to adopt a strict lockdown to alleviate the severe strain on the health system caused by the coronavirus. The recommendations comes after hard-hit Brazil registered its deadliest day yet in the pandemic, with more than 4,000 COVID-19 related fatalities, fueling mounting calls for a lockdown.
We greatly fear that a new plateau of 4,000 to 5,000 daily deaths will form during the Brazilian winter if adequate measures are not taken. We need, at the same time, to introduce lockdown measures and offer people psychological support, money and food, because we are heading for a very difficult time. 70% of Brazilians support lockdown measures, so it is very dangerous to spread fake news, as the government itself is doing. It is not true that Brazilian people are against the lockdown.
Chile approved the emergency use of the vaccine produced by China's CanSino Vaccine company on Wednesday, while restriction is the distribution to people aged between 18 and 60. The director of the local regulatory authority explained that the age restriction was due to a lack of studies of the use of this specific vaccine model in elderly people. Chile, which has vaccinated more than 7.1 million people, has already immunized an estimated 84% of people aged over 60. President Sebastián Piñera noted that the CanSino jab requires only one shot for immunization, thus helping to advance the vaccination campaign. The vaccine developed by CanSino is the fourth approved in Chile after those produced by AstraZeneca, Sinovac, and Pfizer. The director of the Pan American Health Organization has highlighted the increase in COVID-19 cases reported in South America, mainly in Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia.
Over the last week, the United States, Brazil, and Argentina were among the 10 countries in the world registering the highest number of new infections worldwide. In areas of Bolivia and Colombia, cases have doubled in the last week, and all 4 countries in the Southern Cone have been experiencing an acceleration in COVID-19 cases, with uninterrupted community transmission in recent weeks.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel announced on Tuesday that new restrictions will be imposed as the country sees a surge in COVID-19 cases. The new measures were analyzed in a meeting between the President, the Prime Minister, scientists, and experts to address the increase in the number of cases registered over the past few weeks. These measures include quarantining communities with a high number of infections, increasing police patrols to ensure people are following the measures and the curfew, and the issuing of fines to those who do not comply with social distancing. In addition, the Ministry of Health explained that the presence of 5 new virus strains in the country, internationally recognized as highly contagious, is having an impact on the rising infection rate. In Colombia, health authorities set up emerging vaccination centers in the Amazon region to immunize indigenous communities against COVID-19. This Wednesday, vaccination groups installed their equipment in the municipality of Iñárida in the department of Guayna. Doctors who traveled to that region emphasized that these indigenous communities are priority groups because of their high level of vulnerability to the emergency of the Brazilian strain.
The ministry gave priority to this area because of the Brazilian strain that is close, because we have bordered with Brazil. Then they said vaccinate all the population over 18 in the city of Iñárida.
Spanish authorities announced that will reserve the AstraZeneca vaccine for those aged over 60 after the EU regulators said blood clots should be listed as a rare side effect of the jab.
Available. To date, as a precautionary principle, it is recommended that the AstraZeneca vaccine be used in people aged 60 and over. This proposal was made by the Interterritorial Council and was approved by a large majority. Therefore, the vaccination strategy will now change from the AstraZeneca vaccine, and people over 60 will be vaccinated.
On Thursday, Australia became the latest country to restrict the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The authorities recommended not to provide the vaccine to those under 50 years of age. The announcement came after the drug regulators held a series of urgent meetings after the European Medicines Agency advised that it had found a possible link between the shot and rare blood clots. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said he received a series of recommendations from the advisory group, and that chief among them was that the Pfizer vaccine should now be adopted as the preferred jab for people under 50. The Prime Minister explained that the recommendations were made with an abundance of caution due to the rare but serious side effects, which have mostly been associated with younger people. On Thursday, the Republic of San Marino received another batch of the Russian coronavirus vaccine Sputnik V.
We are trying to accelerate this campaign with the ambitious aim to conclude the vaccination in our republic by the end of May. As for the number of people vaccinated, as of today, 30% of the population have received the 4th dose, while we are at above 50% for those who received the 2nd.
Kyoto University Hospital announced on Thursday that the hospital has successfully transplanted the lung tissue from a living person to a COVID-19 patient. The hospital said it is the first lung transplant on a patient with a COVID-19 lung problem in Japan and the world also. Hiroshi Date, the thoracic surgeon in charge of the operation, said that until now doctors did not have this option on the table. It is a new treatment which they believe will give hope to COVID-19 patients. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Kenya condemned the United Kingdom's decision to add the East African country to its coronavirus travel red list. Starting on April 9, Kenyans or anybody transiting through Kenyan airports is banned from setting foot in the UK. In a strong-worded statement on Saturday, Kenya's Foreign Affairs Ministry said the decision was discriminatory and lacked logic and scientific knowledge of the disease or the spread of the pandemic. Nairobi also accused London of hoarding vaccines, saying it had more than it needs. The UK has ordered more than 400 million coronavirus vaccine doses for a population of around 67 million people. The country has so far administered over 31 million doses. Kenya, which has a population of 53 million, has received just over 1 million AstraZeneca vaccine doses from COVAX. Palestinians share mixed feelings towards the U.S. decision for to summon financial support to the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. The Biden administration's decision to restore U.S. aid to the Palestinians with about $235 million marked a sharp break from the policy of his pro-Israel predecessor Donald Trump, who severed all financial assistance. The new funding is in addition to $15 million announced earlier by the United States in COVID assistance to the Palestinians, amid criticisms that Israel, a leader in vaccinating its own people, has not taken similar initiatives in territories under its occupation. However, the agency said its needs have increased due to COVID-19 and the hardships faced by Palestinians living in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan.
These funds are politicized. The money that goes to the authority and UNRWA is politicized and used to pressure us, to weaken us politically and force us to make political concessions to coincide with the plans proposed by the United States and Israel.
In Sudan, at least 87 people were killed and 191 injured following strong episodes of intertribal violence in Jenaina city in western Darfur state. The latest clashes erupted from a shooting last Saturday that killed 2 people from the Massacre tribe in a camp for displaced people. After the event, there were clashes between members of the Risegat and Massacre tribes, both with armed mobilization. Last Monday, Sudanese authorities declared a state of emergency and sent military personnel to the region with the aim of controlling the situation. For their part, the Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors reported on Wednesday a shooting at vehicles transporting health workers to UN warehouses in Jenaina without reported fatalities. In Mozambique, local campaigners have called for more support for children in the northern Cabo Delgado province, following the recent insurgent attack on the coastal town of Palma. Violence has forced at least 11,000 people to flee the strategic town, the hub for a giant gas project featuring foreign investment, with thousands more reported to be trapped inside the area. Those fleeing the violence have been arriving to different cities of the country by foot, road, and boat since March 24th, in the aftermath of the attacks. Experts have warned that experiences of violence can have a long-term impact on children's lives, which must be addressed. Based on testimonies from people abducted by the rebels and mothers of children that were kidnapped in the area, a lot of minors were kept in camps where insurgents live and trained to work for them.
We are afraid. There were different kinds of kidnappings taking place. Sometimes it was said that there were women abducted, but actually there were a lot of people being kidnapped. And in the middle of those people, there were children, so we are afraid. Some of the people that went to that place, the camp of the insurgents, they saw children. It is not just to send them to the school, and that's it. They need a follow-up, they need proper food, extracurricular education, accompany their families, and monitor how they are spending their time.
With only 3 days ahead of the presidential election, Benin voters remain split over the election, with some saying they will support current President Patrice Talon for re-election, while others are criticizing the vote as skewed in Talon's favor in the West African nation.
The fact that the politicians they made a political play, we are disappointed, because politicians, we have profiteering politicians in this country. We have known profiteering politicians, I tell you. Profiteers, they are not here to fight. President Patrice Talon, what he has done is enormous, because since 1960 we have not yet seen a president in Benin who has worked like that in this country. Seriously, in these 5 years that he has done many strange things. He has put things in order. Everything is going well.
In Myanmar, engineers, teachers and students came together in the southern city of Dawei to continue to protest against February 1st military takeover. Despite 8 deaths and the hands of security forces in Dawei since February 1st, opponents of the junta have continued to keep a presence on its streets, frequently managing to avoid confrontations by changing start times and breaking into smaller groups. According to the Assistant Association for Political Prisoners, around 600 civilians have been killed in the country and nearly 2,900 detained. An Iranian tanker arrived in Syria to alleviate fuel shortages in the war-hit country. The vessel transported 1 million barrels of crude oil to Syria. The ship entered the territory through the port of Benin, located on the west coast of Syria. The oil arrives after knowing about the daily looting of 140,000 barrels of oil by the United States troops. The Syrians have said that their energy resources are being taken to Iraq in tanker trucks. In recent days, the Syrian authorities promised that the fuel shortages in the country would end soon. Also, in Northern Ireland, young people set a hijack bus on fire and hurled gasoline bombs at police in Belfast on Wednesday, in at least the fourth night of serious violence in a week. People also lobbed bricks, fireworks and gasoline bombs Wednesday night in both directions over a concrete peace wall that separate Protestants, British loyalists and Catholic, Irish nationalist neighbourhoods. Police Service in Northern Ireland Assistant Chief Constable Jonathan Roberts said 55 people were injured over several nights of disorder. The recent violence, largely in loyalist Protestant areas, has flared amidst rising tensions over post-Brexit trade rules for Northern Ireland and worsening relations between the parties in the Protestant Catholic power-sharing Belfast government. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.